Set. We'll wait till you land.
Thank you, sir.
That's the Squiddy Bald, and there's a little saddle in there, and then Hot Rock Fall is to the right, the other high point. They're both over 5,000 feet.
This is a spectacular area. It's 16,000 acres, and interior to the rim is the bear sanctuary.
We did a thing for GATC sometime about, just a workshop on my favorite hikes or something, and this was the one I picked.
Fires Creek to me, it's the best spot in western North Carolina.
You just get the feeling of wilderness. You can look out and you see those ridges and you don't see development on top of them.
I'd compare the Appalachian Trails to something like a, it's a really nice trail, but it's too crowded for a lot of people. People that want to hike a trail that's in rougher territory and not manicured so much. There's no shelters, there's no privies and so forth in this trail. This is a more remote. It's a more original, the way the original country was for the people first finding it. It's a backcountry area. The Appalachian Trail is kind of an interstate of hiking.
It's a complete watershed, which is very rare to have in the Southern Appalachian. A complete watershed that's in good shape, that's mostly in public ownership, and that has important biological elements intact.
This is one of the true biodiversity hotspots, not just within the United States, but in the world. And from a plant perspective and from freshwater plant and animal life, frankly, the southeast of the United States is one of the most important conservation priorities that we have on the planet.
I learned about it from John Ray. He mentioned it to me when we were up there. He said, they're going to build some houses or condos or something up here. I said, no way, no way. No way that could happen.
It's a quiet place, so having houses and roads in there is just like sort of having a party in a cathedral or something.
Circling around, it's 26 miles of pristine wildlife to hike. The inholding's right here, and you can see it would sever the rim trail as well as wipe out this Phillips Ridge trail.
This steep slope here, of course, rerouting a trail off the rim, coming down this way is not an option, and you can see why. It's a sheer drop off. I mean, it goes down, I'm looking down 75 feet right here. There's no way to route a trail over here. It's impossible.
Well, for me, just disgust and incredulous. You can't believe something like this is going to happen. It's just a beautiful place. And of course, then I started remembering Edward Abbey's book, The Monkey Wrench Gang. But that's a whole different line of attack there if you've read that.
Well, it's not just a regional issue. This is an area frankly, of global importance from a conservation of nature perspective, but also for the Southeast. This is one of the true gems for recreation and for connecting with nature. And to see a relatively small group, a special interest, be in a position to cut access to tens of hundreds of miles of trail in some of the most important area in our country is unacceptable.
A couple of years ago, when we were doing a study in the Fires Creek area, we had some Duke University interns who were working with us to do a survey of the roads in Fires Creek for impacts and potential impacts on the stream system. And when we first saw the Phillips Ridge Road, it was a real puzzle. It didn't make any sense. Everything we had the road was that it really was a trail that when we got up onto the road, we saw that it had recently been upgraded and had been upgraded in such a way that it was already contributing silt to Laurel Branch from the road construction.
Public trail into an access road for private development is just a not a good precedent. I think even though it would be a gated road and it would only be accessible to certain people, it's an intrusion, especially in an area like this, I think, which is so rugged and so has that feeling of wildness about it, that if you're walking along on that trail and all of a sudden a horn honks at you, again, I get that cathedral feeling that it just would be jarring.
The road is going to wash out. It's already started. The newly graveled area, there is washing occurring. Now they've got some silt fences up there, but it's only a matter of time before they're overrun or the water and sedimentation goes around them and into the creek. It'll happen.
Laurel Creek starts right in the center of the inholding. That's the headwaters from it. It comes out right here. It's hard to see it on this scale of map, but that would be obliterated.
Having a bear sanctuary there means that there is a large intact ecosystem that supports, of course, not only a top carnivore like a bear, but all other related species, which means we have a really functioning ecosystem up there, which is not the case in so many fragmented habitats.
It could interrupt their natural behavior. If there's garbage up there, it could make hunting more accessible.
If you live up there, you're going to have dogs. And you're not going to tie them up, so the dogs will be roaming, and that creates.
You'd hope not.
Yes, they would. You know they would. They'd have dogs. They'd be howling and barking, and they'd be chasing bears all over the mountain. Maybe.
My name is Bruce Johnson, and I'm a member of the North Carolina Bartram Trail Society, and I work with the Southeastern Foot Trails Coalition as a member there, just sort of trying to help maintain trails and close gaps in trails and build a larger network of trails.
My name is Mary Ann Skeen, and I live in Decatur, Georgia.
Gregory Miller, President, American Hiking Society.
My name is Harmon Larry Jones, and I've been hiking for more years than I care to admit, really. I'm an illustrator, and I also work with the Whitfield County School System in Dalton, Georgia.
I'm John Ray, and I'm retired now, but I taught at Clemson, taught physics at Clemson for a long time.
I'm Hugh Irwin, and I'm Conservation Planner and Program Director with Southern Appalachian Forest Coalition.
I started going there in, I guess, 75. I rode my motorcycle over and did a day hike up and came back out about 14 miles. Later, when I got into backpacking, I would backpack in by myself. And my father was a ham operator, so was I. I had a walkie-talkie. So my dad would drop me off, and then I'd just go cross-country off the trails through the whole area. And when I knew I was coming out, I had the map. I'd call my dad on the radio and tell him where to pick me up. Usually about the time I stepped out on the road, there's my dad.
It was back in the early to mid 80s, and I was just learning how to backpack and was thrilled at getting out overnight in the wilderness and so forth. And there was an article in Brown's Guide to Georgia, which was a wonderful magazine back then, and there was an article on this area. And it thoroughly intrigued me. It talked about, they interviewed some old forest rangers and talked about the forests there, talked about the archaeological sites, and it just seemed like a nice place to go. So I did a hike there and then decided that it would be a good place to lead hikes for the Georgia Appalachian Trail Club.
I was up there by myself once. Cold, wet, been there 2 days. I was standing in the gap just before Tusquity Ball on the rim trail, watching the sunrise over the Nantahala Mountains, because you can see the whole Nantahala Range. Clouds pouring in and filling up the valley, sunrise. I'm eating some kind of freeze-dried, and I'm really just soaking wet and cold. And I look down, there's a rabbit sitting beside me, watching the sunrise. To me, the rabbit was not a rabbit. That was the shape-shifted medicine man.
There's a book called Myths of the Cherokee. It was published around the turn of the 19th, 20th century. And apparently there was a Cherokee warrior or Cherokee hunter all alone up there on that rim, walking along, and he heard voices. And so he kind of, hid in the brush to try to see what was going on. And he looked out there, and there were two water dogs walking along the pathway, the Cherokee hunter pathway. And a water dog to a Cherokee is some sort of big amphibious lizard that's in their myth, legends, and oral history. And these two water dogs were walking along hand in hand, and one of them looked at the other. They're up on the rim at this time, and they said, "Where did all the water go?" And they just looked at each other and laughed. And so Tusquety apparently in the Cherokee language means where the water dogs laughed. And so whenever we were up along that area, when we were hiking up there and we didn't quite know where we were, or thought we were lost, or one of our hikers was wandering somewhere, we said, "The water dogs are laughing."
The same day, 2 hours later, I'm walking down through the forest off trail, and I hear wood crackling. And I say, well, somebody's breaking firewood, right? Now, there was a bear ripping across one of those big gray logs that are on the ground. He just tearing it apart. He was finding food. He didn't see me. I watched him for about 15 minutes, and I kind of slipped back and went around and went the other way. But in one day, in that area, I saw two of the most impressive things in my life. So the beautiful sunrise shared by wildlife, and then this fantastic bear. And to me, that whole area is an Indian medicine ground. The whole area is. They've got pot rocks in there where the medicine men used to mix different herbs and different things. And you can still find the pot rocks, especially on Pot Rock Falls.
My great-grandfather was an Indian. And back then, turn of the century, if you had an Indian last name, it was detrimental to your work life, career, everything else. So since I have a little bit of history there, I always take this donation. That one's pretty. That's a pretty new one. 75, 85, 95, $1.07. That's our lucky number. When we get back, we'll get a lottery number that has 1 and 0 and a 7. Secret of the pot rock.
Right. Where the fuck is fine.
Thank you, white folks. I'm gonna go to McDonald's and buy a hamburger with that.
It's like a small national park, and how would it do to build a housing development up by Clingman's Dome? How would that change the Smokies? It's the same question. This is just a smaller area. Well, it would severely impact it. It would change the whole feel of it.
I can't see buildings out there. I just can't see them.
How can we as responsible citizens, and myself as a responsible and influential citizen in my job, help evoke positive change? And that's either to address a threat forthright, in this case, and stop a development, or in a more proactive way, educate people and provide opportunities for people to get out, to connect with nature by hiking, get out on some of these beautiful trails like the Rim Trail in this case, and allow our colleagues in our society to reconnect with nature.
Why not leave one part of it, pristine for future generations? There'll be a lot of people there eventually, if you take 50 years down the road. Wouldn't it be nice for them to have a place to go back and hike and not have man-made structures in there so they can see the countryside the way it really developed originally? It's such a shame. I can't understand how it's even gone this far.
What happens if they start to subdivide? You got potentially 4 families going now. What'll happen in 10 years? You may have, who knows how many.
The old timers like me, we call it progress, and it's a cuss word. So it's not. When I was a kid, I could see 1 light at night from our house. Now I can see like 10. And it's just disgusting to me that all these people have moved into my area. but still I'm better off than a lot of other people where I live.
It strikes me as being odd that we can just auction off our, our forest land, our wilderness land that we've had out here for so many generations, have enjoyed it, and now it appears that people with, with means can come in here, buy our Forest Service land or buy the in holdings, make developments out of them, and it makes me wonder as to what kind of people purchase these lands. You're going in here and you're destroying a wilderness so you can live in the middle of the wilderness, and then where did the wilderness go to? I'm passionate about it. It's a very pressing problem that if we as people in this country don't get our hands on it and stop this kind of nonsense, we're not going to have any more wilderness left for our grandchildren, our children.
I just don't want the water dogs to cry if this happens. I think they would.